I mentioned in my last video on the Paps of Anu, if you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out on my profile. I mentioned John Moriarty, a philosopher, poet, writer, a Kerryman who died a good few years ago. It was in 2007. And he was a good friend of a person I mentioned in the last video, Father Pat Moore. Pat Moore was not your usual priest. He was a guy that was a writer himself. He was an amazing individual who gave me great help, solace, and advice for a period of time when I was struggling so much with mental health in 2013, 2014. He was a great individual that came at a very interesting time in my life while I was living in Tralee. So he introduced me to John Moriarty and to the books like Dreamtime, Turtle Was Gone a Long Time, Invoking Ireland. And also I have friends as well who were massive fans and advocates of his work. The reason I mentioned John Moriarty is he's the greatest philosopher that you've never heard of, probably. He is one of the most significant writers you've never heard of, potentially. He is one of the most influential minds of Irish literature. So this is the reason why I wanted to introduce you to him. And actually there's been other creators that are bringing up John Moriarty of late. And to surmise and to give an indication of what he's all about, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a bio on him, is that John encapsulated something that I'm very much naturally gravitated towards, which is going back into the myths and folklore and ancient history of Ireland, and actually looking at that very intently to really heal ourselves and to really understand the present, because so much of what we see in modern day and so much of our own problems are actually stuff that has happened in the past. We can learn a lot about how we can overcome this stuff, how we can overcome it psychologically. So the biggest analogy is like, and John Moriarty would have used this a lot, and actually if you search John Moriarty on YouTube, you're going to find a lot on him because he's got a lot of free lectures and stuff up there. And Tommy Tiernan is a huge fan. There was a big festival on this year. He talked about one time, we have to imagine ourselves as a culture, as a nation, as a people, as Irish people. Imagine ourselves going to the psychotherapist or the counselor and lying down in the chair and going back into our history and into our subconscious. We have to do that as people, as a nation, as a public consciousness, and go right back into the myths, go back into the old stories. And that's where we find our peace and our healing, because when we go to a counselor or psychologist or whatever, we go back into our childhood and try to uncover the truth and uncover the beauty in the ugliness and the healing in the darkness, and that's what we have to do as a nation, as a culture. And John Moriarty, this is what he's all about. This is what he's all about. He's a very important person that you probably never heard of. Would you believe me? Oh yes.